Yesterday, I was in the Domain at the I Can't Breathe Black Lives Matter protest calling for justice for David Dungay Jr. I was in the Domain because I know that systemic racism, just like COVID-19, can infect our community and cause significant harm. I also know that both are lethal. Like so many, I have had enough of this so-called justice system assisting police to undermine the rights to peaceful assembly and safely protest in our community. We are living in a new reality with this pandemic, with at the moment no clear end in sight. And so it is absolutely essential that as part of our healthy democracy, as part of our ability for our citizens to enact and engage their rights to peaceful assembly and peaceful protest, that we find COVID-safe ways for people to engage with actions, community protests and activities in the way that the government and authorities are currently facilitating corporate entities, corporations, commercial entities, and indeed this very Parliament to continue the functioning of their duties while doing it in a COVID-safe way. It is really concerning to me how people have attempted to distract from the issue of the rally yesterday by focusing on a false dichotomy. And so therefore I would like to put on the record a statement made by a member of the Dungay family as to the reasons they were protesting yesterday, and I quote, "The reason we are protesting is because after 5 years, not a single person has been held accountable for the death of my uncle. Safe Work New South Wales and the DPP won't even investigate whether charges should be laid. How would you feel if these government officials wouldn't even lift a finger to investigate whether there should be charges following David's death? Remember that the coroner said that there was no reason for anyone to enter David Jr.'s cell that day to assault him. The police say they want to shut us down because they are concerned about people's lives, but they don't care about Black lives. Are we not human too? Under the protocol for investigation and cooperation between agencies following a serious workplace incident, the Police Commissioner could work with the DPP and Safe Work New South Wales to investigate my uncle's death, and they could investigate whether charges could be laid, but they are refusing to do that. The Commissioner isn't interested in investigating my uncle's death. All he wants to do is shut me up and silence Black voices to stop us complaining about the way that we are treated." In this statement, they actually called on the Premier to make a commitment to asking Safe Work New South Wales and the DPP to investigate whether charges could be laid. And they said that they would be sure that they could put off the protests in the interest of community safety if the Premier made that one small action. It is incredibly disappointing to see that no leadership was provided and no action was taken. And for all of those, including those in my community in the electorate of Newtown that I represent, who are saying that this is not the right time, you are absolutely correct. The right time for mass mobilisation and outrage about David Dungay Jr.'s death was in the days and weeks after the 29th of December 2015, when he was found dead in his cell in Long Bay Jail. Why didn't you do it then? Why no action then? You see that it is a totally flawed argument to say that it is not reasonable or rational to do it now in a pandemic and try and tell this family and these Aboriginal leaders and this activist community that now is not the right time, because they know it's not the right time. The time was then, back in 2015, when there was no outrage about his death. In the context of the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, I think people have been quoting Martin Luther King, and I think it's important to put this quote on the record here. "First, I must confess that over the past few years I have been greatly disappointed with the white moderate. I have also reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counsellor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate. who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal that you seek, but I cannot agree with you in the methods of your direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. I urge this Parliament to do all that they can to address systemic racism in our community and make sure that we focus on both the needs to have COVID-safe measures, but also to enable people to protest significant issues in our community.
I thank the member.